Hello everybody, Adam Clery from FourFourTwo here, and Manchester United have signed Leny Yoro. And that, not unlike the player himself, because he's like 6'3", is no small thing. At 18 years old and like 50-odd million quid in transfer fees, he breaks all manner of records for players in his age group and players in his position. But perhaps more significantly, Man United have stolen him from under the nose of Real Madrid. And they saw him as the long-term feature of their defence, the ultimate successor to 𝗕𝗫𝗧𝗏. So A, why did Real Madrid rate him so highly? And B, why did Man United go out and spend allegedly double what he was valued at to make sure they got him instead? Transfer videos are back, yay! Okay, so if you're coming into this video completely cold on Leny Yoro, that's him there. He will be the right-sided centre-back in a back four. That's where he played for Lille all last season. That's where he likes to be. But before we get into him specifically, right, this is the Manchester United 11 from last season based on the players that were most commonly used. However, there is a curiosity in this 11 at the centre-back position, because while this is the two players who were most commonly used, it is not the pairing that was most commonly used. That, believe it or not, was Jonny Evans and Rafa Varane. If you're sitting there thinking, don't remember them playing together that often, was that really the most common centre-back pairing? Yes, it happened 6 times in the Premier League. Just 6. In fact, there is this absolutely sensational graph on the Opta website today. Only 6 times that pairing appeared, but it meant we saw it more than Varane and Maguire, more than Evans and Maguire, more than Lindelof and Maguire, more than any combination with Martinez in it. Casemiro's in there sometimes. 𝗕𝗫𝗧𝗏, Luke Shaw somehow turned up. Manchester United had no stability whatsoever in that key position. And obviously, we know why that is. Ten Hag wasn't just pulling them out of a hat every single week. They had really, really bad injury problems in those positions, meaning they could never get any stability at the back. And if I've said it once, my friends, I've said it 1,000 times. What is the single most important ability in football? Availability. Above all the other things that Leny Yoro does on the ball and off it, which we're going to get to in just a second, Manchester United have spent that much money on him because he is young, he is full of energy, he will run for days. He's missed like 3 days of his entire career to injury. They can build around him reliably. That, and obviously Varane has left, hasn't he? 𝗕𝗫𝗧𝗏's left. Lindelof will probably leave. Jonny Evans is my age and was never actually signed to play football in the first place, so him getting 23 appearances, I've not made that up, in the Premier League last season was a problem all of its own. So they needed another body regardless. And I mean, ladies and gentlemen, what a body that is. Not in a creepy way. At 18 years old and 6'3", he's all sort of limbs and shoulders and legs and arms and very, very gangly. This is a player who does potentially change things massively for Man United. So what kind of defender is he? There's been lots of comparisons done so far with Varane himself, who he's obviously the direct replacement for, Rio Ferdinand, who's apparently his idol growing up, but does he play like either of those? Well, there's been a little bit of concern already from people going and looking at the old FBref profile to see how he sort of compares to all these other players, because a lot of the numbers there look really, really underwhelming. Now, first up, these are his defensive numbers on FBref. Now, if you're new to the channel, you've never watched this kind of thing before, you've never heard of that website, right? It basically brings together all the data across world football for how certain players play, and those are the raw numbers for how many times he does something per 90 minutes across the season. And these bars on the right basically allow you to contextualize that. That's it compared to other centre-backs. And in this graph, it's in comparison with all the other centre-backs across Europe's top 5 leagues over the last 365 days. So basically all last season, how does he compare to the other defenders in Ligue 1, Serie A, the Premier League, La Liga, and the Bundesliga? So the big tests. Now, if a player is particularly good at something, doing it more than lots of other players, those bars will be very long and very green, and that number on the end will be very, very high, represents what percentile they're in. So if it says 99, you're in the top 1%, but if they're low and they're small and they're red, it means they don't do them as often as other players. And so, on the face of it, that is an incredibly underwhelming set of statistics for a defender. He doesn't make many tackles, he never really gets at dribblers, he hardly ever blocks the ball. Like, these are the numbers of an average too bad footballer. But what these numbers don't give you is like proper context, because individual numbers are all well and good, but that's an individual who's playing as part of a team's play style, and that play style can massively influence what it is you're doing. Yoro's role in France was not to be a front foot defender going after the ball and chasing it. Instead, he worked more as a sweeper in their back four, sort of dropping off, allowing other players to challenge for the ball, and then basically mopping up stray passes, mopping up loose balls, or then going after players and sort of like motioning them out of play. So fundamentally, his numbers for tackling tended to be very low because if somebody got through to him, he can't really afford to go diving in. His job is then more to sort of stand them up, stop the play, and see if he can stick out one of his very gangly legs and try and nick the ball back. And Man United fans, if that's just ringing the tiniest, faintest little bell in the back of your head, that is because it's the kind of player Rafa Varane was, especially when he was at his best at Madrid. Like, just to show you the exact same numbers for Varane during his last season in Spain, which is, I think, considered one of his best, you'll see they're very similar in terms of profile. He's not really putting a lot of tackles in. He's not really getting a dribblers. On the face of it, these would be the numbers of a pretty underwhelming player, but you know they're not. They're from someone who was genuinely world class. That's just how he played. And if you're still not entirely convinced, then he does at least pass the eye test in this regard. Like, his reading of the game is something that is already way developed for how old he is, and he gets across into empty spaces, he recognizes danger, he gets over to runners, and then he does, very calmly, bide his time, only challenging for it if he thinks he's got a good chance of winning it, and that's what makes him a really good defender already. Caveat: he is still 18 years old and can get sold a kipper quite easily. The amount of times attackers, when at the very last moment they look to shoot, they'll cut back and he just is off to the shops, is still a little bit too high, but that's obviously something you'd expect him to improve upon as he gets older. Like Lille, very similar to Manchester United, also played a 4-2-3-1 last season, but they had hyper aggressive fullbacks who'd push all the way up the pitch. So Yoro's job tended to be not just sitting in this space, but covering right across onto the flank, making sure that opposition attackers or even fullback couldn't exploit that. And his just reading of knowing when to be there and when to sit and when to engage and when to not was so far above his years. Above his years? It's beyond his years, isn't it? So far beyond his years. Yeah. So that's Varane, but he also gets compared to Rio Ferdinand, who was sort of a very calm, on-the-ball central defender as well, and that also, to a degree, is Yoro. Now, these are his passing numbers, and unlike the defending ones, they actually do paint a fairly complete picture of the player he is. You can see there's a lot of green in terms of the amount of times he gets on the ball and his pass completion and what he's doing. Sort of short and neat and tidy and risk-free. Brilliant. Like, you cannot panic him on the ball. If you watch Man United's friendly with Rangers, you've already seen that. He's happy to receive it in any sort of position. He doesn't mind people pressing him. That's really, really valuable in the Premier League. Like, 94th and 95th percentile for completed short and medium passes across all the centre-backs in Europe's big leagues is staggering, frankly. He'll have it off the goalkeeper, he will find the midfielders, he will find his fullback. It doesn't matter whether there's a player in his face or a little bit of space, that rhymes. He's so composed, so cool, so calm on the ball. But you will see, for all this lovely green at the top of the chart, there is a lot of this red at the bottom, and that's because the kinds of passes he's capable of making are currently, he is 18, limited. So key passes, progressive passes, ones into the final third, ones into the penalty area. To quote Austin Powers, they are not his bag, baby. And what that means in real terms is that while he's excellent on the ball, whether it's passing or carrying it, he should be making more of an impact in terms of how Manchester United can build up and play through the opposition. That's not something he's likely to be doing at this stage of his career. He's short, he's neat, he's tidy, but he's not going to change anything for Manchester United from a possession standpoint. Again, caveat to all of that, he's 18 and he's definitely got the technical ability to improve in that area, but in terms of what he's likely to do immediately, it ain't that. But now, the fun part, right? So this is probably painting the picture to you of a player who is good, is solid, is definitely an upgrade on what Manchester United have got. But why go out there and chuck nearly 60 million on a player who's roughly been valued at about 30, 35? Well, in short, because he is potentially worth a lot more to Manchester United than he would be to any other club interested in him, because he solves one very specific problem. If you watched any of our coverage on Ten Hag's Manchester United last season, you know exactly what I'm going to talk about now, but if not, I'll keep it really short for you, right? Man United's entire problem tactically speaking, was they liked to press you really, really high with all of these players, but because they had very little pace in the defence, certainly in the central areas, they wouldn't commit the entire team forward, leaving this gap. Oh boy, the mileage I've got out of this particular compilation. If you can turn the ball over against Manchester United, or if you can play through their initial pressure, you've just got all this space to run into, and that was the major reason why their shots conceded numbers last season were comparable with all the relegated sides. Wide open. But all of a sudden, you put Yoro into this back four, and you've got not only a player who was a better reader of danger than you've currently got, but also someone who's quick as a f***ing bee. And that is why I mentioned before about Man United's most common centre-back pairing being Varane and Evans, because you've got two solid, dependable, experienced central defenders there, but also two lads who I think I could have a go at in a foot race. And like, I have a heart condition and knees made of crisp packets. You bring in Yoro's ability to read the game, to recognise danger, to make recovery runs, to never ever get done in a sprint, and all of a sudden, that entire Manchester United defence can push further up the pitch, which is a huge deal for them. Partly because it allows you to bring Onana more into play, to use his sort of playmaking and his sort of ability with the ball from the back, but also it allows them to press more cohesively as a unit and do exactly the kind of football Ten Hag really wants them to do. And that's not to say he's a magic fix and everything's going to be amazing and they're going to win the Super Bowl this year, but it does certainly get them closer to being the kind of team Ten Hag's always insisted they were going to be. Now they do still, and this is just me editorializing at this point, need to decide what kind of player 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 is going to be and then go shop for somebody who will complement that very nicely. And they also need a lot more goals from centre forwards. So either they need to give better service to Højlund, or 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏's got to come in and change sort of what they're doing up front. But the major problem they had was the pace at the back. And Yoro, if nothing else, solves that overnight. And that's why sometimes it is okay to pay massively over the odds for a footballer, because he was worth 30 million to Real Madrid, because they were going to bring him in and gradually introduce him to the first team and see if he was at the kind of level that they wanted him to be. But he's worth more to Manchester United if he immediately remedies some issues. I'm trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to mention about him. Yeah, the whole sort of like not going out and winning the ball, being a physical sort of defender. I think if you look at his frame now at 18, that'll start to fill out in the next 2 or 3 years. And I think you'll see at Manchester United him becoming more of a front foot aggressive player. I think those numbers are reflective of who he is now, not who he's going to be. Anyway, speaking of numbers reflecting who you are, thank you so much for viewing this video here on FourFourTwo. And if it is your first experience with us as a channel, please do consider subscribing to us here, because we're going to do so much transfer coverage over the next month for your club, definitely, whoever that is. And then we're into the Premier League season, where we'll be doing all the tactical breakdowns of all the fun stuff. And if you're one of the like tens of thousands of people who've joined us over the last month during the Euros, welcome aboard. This is what club football looks like. Remember it? You get me on all the social medias at Adam Clery, Clery. The FourFourTwo socials are in the corner of the video. I've already asked you to subscribe, but I would like you also to comment below if you are a Manchester United fan. Are you excited by Yoro? Does he get straight into your best 11? What is your best 11? Because Sancho and Mount, and that's a video we're going to have to do all of its own, so I would like to take the old pulse on it. But yes, anyway, until next time, I have been Adam Clery. This has been FourFourTwo. That's Leny Yoro, him, right there, that guy. And we'll both see you soon. Say goodbye, Lenny. Au revoir.